Clara Bennett pressed her palm against the frozen train window and watched her tears turn to ice on the glass. In her other hand, she clutched a letter from a stranger, a rancher in Montana, who needed a wife to help raise 5 orphaned children. He didn't know that the woman answering his advertisement could never give him babies of her own. He didn't know she'd been cast out of Philadelphia society like a broken thing. And God help her, she wasn't going to tell him. Not until she had nowhere left to run. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from today. And if this story touches your heart, make sure you subscribe, because what happens when Clara meets those 5 children will change everything you believe about motherhood and love. The train lurched and Clara Bennett grabbed the seat in front of her to keep from falling. Her knuckles went white against the worn leather. "You all right there, miss?" She looked up at the conductor, a weathered man with kind eyes and tobacco-stained teeth. "Fine," she managed. "Just not used to the movement." He nodded, glancing at the small leather case clutched in her lap. "Traveling far. Silver Creek, Montana." His eyebrows rose. "That's rough country, especially this time of year. You got family there?" Clara's throat tightened. "I'm meeting my intended." "Ah." The conductor's expression softened with understanding. "Mail-order bride, then. Lots of good women heading west these days. Nothing to be ashamed of." She almost laughed. If only he knew what she should be ashamed of. "Thank you," she whispered, and turned back to the window. The conductor moved on, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts and the rhythmic clatter of wheels on iron tracks. She pulled the letter from her case, the one she'd read so many times. The paper was soft as cloth, and traced the firm handwriting with her fingertip. "Dear Miss Bennett, I won't lie to you about what you'd be walking into. I'm a 36-year-old rancher with calluses on my hands and gray in my hair. I buried my wife 5 years ago and thought I'd never marry again. But 3 years back my brother William and his wife Catherine died from scarlet fever, and I took in their 5 children. They need a mother something fierce, and I need a partner. I ain't looking for romance or pretty words. I'm looking for someone strong enough to love 5 broken children and stubborn enough to survive a Montana winter. If that sounds like something you could do, I'd be honored to have you. Respectfully, Samuel Callahan." Clara folded the letter carefully and pressed it against her chest. Strong enough, stubborn enough. She used to be both those things. Before Dr. Morrison's diagnosis. Before Edward's face twisted with disgust when she told him the truth. Before her own mother looked at her like she was something to be pitied and hidden away. "You're damaged goods now, Clara. No decent man will have you." Her mother's words still burned like acid in her memory. The train whistle screamed, jolting her from her thoughts. Outside the window, the landscape had transformed into something foreign and terrifying. Endless white plains broken only by dark mountains that scraped the gray sky like broken teeth. Montana, the end of the world. Or maybe she thought, gripping her case tighter, the beginning of a new one. The Silver Creek station was little more than a wooden platform and a small building that looked like it might blow away in a strong wind. Clara stepped off the train into air so cold it hurt to breathe. "Miss Bennett." She turned toward the voice and found herself face to face with a man who looked like he'd been carved from the mountains themselves. Samuel Callahan was taller than she'd expected, with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway, and hands that hung at his sides like they didn't quite know what to do with themselves. His dark hair was dusted with snow, and when he removed his hat, she saw the gray at his temples that he'd mentioned in his letter. But it was his eyes that caught her. Brown, deep as wells with shadows in them that spoke of grief and sleepless nights and burdens carried alone for too long. "Mr. Callahan." She extended her gloved hand, willing it not to tremble. He took it gently, like he was afraid she might break. "Welcome to Montana, Miss Bennett. I hope the journey wasn't too hard on you." "I've survived worse." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or approval. "I reckon you have. The wagon's this way. We should get moving before the weather turns." He reached for her trunk, lifting it like it weighed nothing, and led her toward a sturdy wagon hitched to two patient horses. Clara climbed up onto the seat beside him, pulling her coat tighter against the biting wind. "The children," she said as he guided the horses onto the road. "They know I'm coming." "They know." He was quiet for a moment, his jaw tight. "Grace, she's the eldest, 15. She's been running the household since Catherine died. She ain't happy about being replaced." Clara absorbed this information carefully. "I'm not here to replace anyone, Mr. Callahan." "Sam," he corrected. "If we're going to be married, might as well start with first names." "Sam, then." She tasted the word, found it solid and plain and honest. "And you should call me Clara." He nodded, keeping his eyes on the road ahead. "Clara, that's a pretty name." "My grandmother's." "She's still living." "No, she passed when I was 12. "I'm sorry." The words were simple, but she heard genuine sympathy in them. This was a man who understood loss. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of the wagon and the steady clop of hooves on frozen ground. Clara studied the landscape, white and vast and empty, and felt something loosen in her chest. No one here knew her shame. No one here had seen Edward's face when he'd called off their engagement. No one here had witnessed the pitying glances of Philadelphia society matrons, or heard the whispers that followed her through church halls. Here she was, just Clara Bennett. A woman answering an advertisement. A woman with a chance to start over. If she could keep her secret long enough to earn her place. "Tell me about them," she said finally. "The children." Sam's shoulders relaxed slightly, like talking about them was easier than the silence. "Grace is 15 going on 40. She's been mother and sister and everything in between to the others since she was 12 years old. She won't trust you easy, but once she does, she's loyal to the bone." Clara nodded, storing this information away. "Then there's the twins Daniel and Henry. They're 11. Daniel's the serious one, always trying to be the man of the house. Henry's a dreamer. Got his head in the clouds half the time, writing in his journal and drawing maps of places he wants to explore someday. And the younger ones." Sam's voice softened. "Lucy's 9. Sweet girl but shy. She still has nightmares about the night her parents died. Draws pictures constantly. It's how she makes sense of things, I think." He paused, and Clara saw his hands tighten on the reins. "And then there's Rosie. She's 6. Something in his tone made Clara's heart clench. "What about Rosie?" "She hasn't spoken a word since her ma and pa died. 3 years of silence." He swallowed hard. "Doc Mercer says there's nothing wrong with her voice. It's just locked up inside her somehow. Trauma, she calls it." Clara closed her eyes, imagining a 6-year-old girl with 3 years of words trapped behind her lips. "That's why you need help," she said quietly. "Not just for cooking and cleaning." "I can cook and clean well enough." Sam turned to look at her directly for the first time since they'd left the station. "What I can't do is give them what they lost. I'm their uncle, not their father, and I sure as hell ain't their mother." The raw honesty in his voice pierced something in Clara's chest. "I'll do my best," she said. "I can't promise miracles, but I can promise to try." Sam studied her face for a long moment, and she forced herself not to look away. Whatever he was searching for, he seemed to find it. "That's all I'm asking," he said finally, and turned back to the road. The Callahan Ranch came into view as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. Clara's breath caught in her throat. It was larger than she'd imagined, a 2-story log house with smoke curling from the chimney, a massive barn, and various outbuildings scattered across the snow-covered property. Mountains rose behind it like silent guardians, their peaks lost in clouds. But what drew her attention was the front porch, where 5 figures stood watching the approaching wagon. "They've been waiting all day," Sam said, a hint of warmth softening his voice. "Couldn't get them to focus on anything else." As the wagon drew closer, Clara could make out individual faces. A tall girl with brown hair and crossed arms stood slightly apart from the others, Grace clearly. 2 boys who looked identical, except for their expressions, flanked a smaller girl with blonde curls who clutched something against her chest. And at the edge of the porch, almost hidden behind a post, stood the smallest figure. Dark hair, enormous brown eyes and an expression of such guarded hope that Clara's heart cracked clean open. Rosie. Sam stopped the wagon and climbed down, then turned to help Clara descend. His hands were strong and steady around her waist, and she was grateful for the support her legs felt like water. Children. Sam called, his voice carrying across the yard. Come meet Miss Clara Bennett. No one moved for a long moment. Then one of the twins, the serious-faced one, stepped forward and walked deliberately toward them. Miss Bennett. He removed his cap and extended his hand with formal dignity. I'm Daniel. Welcome to our home. Clara took his hand, noting the calluses that matched his uncle's. Thank you, Daniel. Your uncle has told me much about you. He tell you I'm the man of the house when he's away. Daniel. Sam's voice carried a warning. He mentioned you take your responsibilities seriously, Clara said carefully. That's an admirable quality. Daniel studied her with eyes far too old for 11, then nodded once and stepped back. The other twin approached next his gait. Looser, his expression curious rather than guarded. I'm Henry. Do you like stars? Uncle Sam said you're from Philadelphia. Can you see stars there? I bet you can't. Too many lights. Here you can see everything. I'm making a map of the constellations. I could show you if you want. Henry. Sam shook his head, but Clara caught the ghost of a smile on his lips. Let the woman breathe. I'd love to see your star map, Clara said, and Henry's face lit up like she'd handed him a gift. The blonde girl crept forward, next one hand still pressed against her chest. As she got closer, Clara saw she was clutching a folded piece of paper. I'm Lucy, she whispered so quiet Clara had to lean in to hear. I made you something. She thrust the paper toward Clara, then darted back like a startled rabbit. Clara unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing the ranch house surrounded by stick figures holding hands. At the bottom, in careful letters, Lucy had written, Our Family. Clara's throat closed up. She had to blink hard before she could speak. This is beautiful, Lucy. May I keep it? Lucy nodded rapidly, a tiny smile flickering across her face, before she retreated to stand behind Daniel. That left Grace and Rosie. Grace hadn't moved from her position on the porch, her arms still crossed, her expression a mask of cool assessment. Clara climbed the steps, slowly stopping a few feet away from the girl. You must be Grace. Your uncle says you've been taking care of everyone for 3 years. Someone had to. The words were sharp, but Clara heard the exhaustion beneath them, the fear. This girl had been carrying a weight no 15-year-old should bear, and now a stranger was walking into her territory. I'm not here to take over, Clara said quietly, pitching her voice so only Grace could hear. I'm here to help. There's a difference. Grace's eyes narrowed. We'll see. Yes. Clara agreed. We will. For a moment, something flickered in Grace's expression. Surprise, maybe, at not being argued with. Then she turned and walked into the house without another word. She'll come around, Sam said from behind Clara. Just give her time. Clara nodded, but her attention had shifted to the small figure still hiding behind the porch post. Rosie. Clara didn't approach her. Instead, she slowly lowered herself to sit on the porch steps, bringing herself to the child's eye level, and simply waited. Rosie watched her with those enormous dark eyes, her tiny body tense as a coiled spring. Minutes passed. The cold seeped through Clara's coat, but she didn't move. Finally, Rosie took one small step forward, then another. She stopped an arm's length away from Clara, studying her face with an intensity that was almost unsettling. Then slowly she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. A stone. Smooth and gray with a vein of white running through it like frozen lightning. Rosie held it out toward Clara, her hand trembling slightly. Clara accepted it with the reverence she might show a diamond. Thank you, Rosie. This is the most beautiful stone I've ever seen. Rosie's face transformed. For just a moment a smile broke through, brilliant and bright and achingly brief, before she turned and fled into the house. Clara closed her fingers around the stone, feeling its coolness against her palm. Well, Sam said, his voice rough, That's more than she's given anyone in 3 years. Clara looked up at him, saw the sheen in his eyes that he was trying to hide. She's still in there, Clara said. The words are just waiting. Sam nodded, cleared his throat, and reached for her trunk. Let's get you inside before you freeze. Grace has supper ready. Clara rose from the steps, her legs stiff from the cold, and followed him into the house that would become her home. Supper was a tense affair. Grace served the food with efficient movements and a face that revealed nothing. The boys ate quickly, Henry chattering about his latest star observations while Daniel watched Clara with cool assessment. Lucy picked at her meal, sneaking glances at Clara when she thought no one was looking. Rosie sat at the far end of the table, eating methodically, her eyes fixed on her plate. This stew is excellent, Clara said, directing the compliment to Grace. The herbs are perfectly balanced. Mama taught me. Grace's voice was flat. Before she died. The table went silent. She must have been a wonderful teacher, Clara said carefully. And you've clearly honored her memory by continuing to use what she taught you. Something shifted in Grace's expression. Surprise maybe, or the first crack in her armor. Before she could respond, Henry launched into a story about a wolf he'd seen near the north pasture, and the moment passed. After supper, Clara helped Grace clean the dishes while Sam took the boys to check on the horses. Lucy hovered near the kitchen doorway, clearly wanting to be close to Clara, but too shy to approach. Rosie had disappeared. Clara heard small footsteps on the stairs, and guessed she'd retreated to her room. You don't have to help, Grace said, not looking up from the pot she was scrubbing. I've been doing this alone for 3 years. I know. Clara dried a plate carefully. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. Grace's hands stilled in the water. Why are you here? Really? Clara set down the plate. Do you want the truth? Always. Clara considered her words carefully. This girl deserved honesty, or as much of it as Clara could give. I needed to escape, she said finally. There were circumstances in Philadelphia that made it impossible for me to stay. Your uncle's advertisement offered a chance at a new life, a chance to be useful, a chance to matter. Grace turned to look at her directly. What circumstances? That's a story for another time. Clara met her gaze steadily. But I promise you this, I'm not here to pretend to be your mother, or to replace the woman who raised you. I'm here to help carry the weight you've been carrying alone. And if you decide you don't want my help, I'll respect that. But I hope you'll give me a chance to prove I'm worth trusting. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned back to the dishes. Rosie gave you her special stone. She did. She's never done that before. Not even to Uncle Sam. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she simply continued drying dishes. There's a room at the end of the hall upstairs, Grace said finally. It was supposed to be for... Well, it doesn't matter what it was for. I put fresh sheets on the bed this morning. Thank you, Grace. Don't thank me yet. Grace pulled the plug and watched the water drain. You haven't survived your first winter. That night, Clara sat on the edge of her bed in the small room that would be hers until the wedding. The house had grown quiet. The children settled in their rooms. Sam's heavy footsteps fading as he retreated to his own quarters at the far end of the hall. She should sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, learning the routines of the household, earning the children's trust, preparing for a wedding to a man she barely knew. But her mind wouldn't quiet. She pulled Sam's letter from her case and read it again, her eyes catching on the words that haunted her most. I ain't looking for romance or pretty words. I'm looking for someone strong enough to love 5 broken children. He thought she was strong. He thought she was capable of loving his children, his brother's children, with her whole heart. And she could. She knew she could. She already felt the pull of it, the fierce protective instinct that had surged through her when Rosie offered that stone with trembling hands, when Lucy pressed that drawing against her chest, when Grace's armor cracked just slightly at the mention of her mother. These children needed her, and God help her she needed them. But Sam also needed something she could never give him. In his next letter, the one that had arrived after she'd already purchased her train ticket, he'd written about his hopes for the future, about building a family together, about the children having siblings someday. He didn't know. He didn't know that the woman he'd invited into his home was barren, empty, incapable of the one thing frontier men needed most from their wives. Clara had justified her silence 100 different ways. She'd told herself she would tell him once she arrived, once she'd proven her worth, once he saw that she could be a good mother to the children already here. But sitting in this cold room listening to the wind howl against the windows, she knew the truth. She was a coward. She was building her new life on a foundation of lies, and sooner or later that foundation would crumble. A soft sound outside her door made her stiffen. She held her breath listening. Footsteps, small ones, hesitant. Clara rose silently and moved to the door. When she opened it, she found Rosie standing in the hallway, a worn blanket clutched in her arms, her dark eyes wide and frightened. "Rosie, what's wrong, sweetheart?" The little girl didn't answer. Of course she didn't, but she reached out and grabbed Clara's hand with surprising strength. Clara's heart stuttered. "Did you have a bad dream?" Rosie nodded, her lower lip trembling. "Do you want to come inside for a while? I could read you a story, or we could just sit together until you feel better." Another nod. Clara led her to the bed and lifted her up onto the mattress, then climbed up beside her. Rosie immediately curled against Clara's side, her small body shaking with silent sobs. "It's all right," Clara whispered, stroking the child's dark hair. "You're safe. I've got you." She held Rosie close, murmuring soft words of comfort until the shaking stopped and the little girl's breathing deepened into sleep. Clara stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of this child against her heart. This was why she'd come. Not for Sam, not for escape, not even for redemption. She'd come for this, for children who needed her for a chance to be a mother, even though her body would never let her be one in the traditional sense. And as she listened to Rosie's soft breathing, Clara made a silent vow. Whatever it cost her, whatever lies she had to tell, whatever secret she had to keep, she would protect these children. She would love them. She would be the mother they needed, even if it meant losing everything else. Clara woke to gray morning light and an empty space beside her. Rosie had slipped away sometime in the night, leaving only a small indentation in the blankets. The house was already stirring. Clara could hear Grace's efficient movements in the kitchen below the thump of the boys' boots on the stairs, the lower rumble of Sam's voice giving morning instructions. She dressed quickly in her warmest dress, practical brown wool that she'd chosen specifically for frontier life, and made her way downstairs. The kitchen was controlled chaos. Grace stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, her movements precise and practiced. Daniel was pumping water into a large pot, while Henry set the table, nearly dropping a plate when he got distracted by something outside the window. Lucy sat in a corner chair, drawing in a small notebook. And Rosie was watching the kitchen doorway, watching for Clara. When Clara appeared, something in the little girl's expression shifted. Not a smile, not quite, but a softening. An acknowledgement. Clara nodded at her gently, and Rosie turned back to watching Grace cook, but her shoulders had relaxed slightly. "Miss Bennet." Sam's voice came from behind her, and Clara turned to find him shrugging on his heavy coat. "I need to check on the cattle in the north pasture. I'll be back before noon. Grace can show you around, answer any questions." "Of course." He paused at the door, studying her face. "You look tired. Everything all right?" "Fine, just adjusting to the altitude." It was a lie, but Sam accepted it with a nod. "Get some rest if you need it. We don't expect you to learn everything in one day." He was gone before she could respond, his boots crunching on the snow outside. "He leaves every morning at dawn," Grace said, without turning from the stove. "Doesn't come back until the work's done. Sometimes that's noon. Sometimes that's nightfall. He works hard. He has to. This ranch is all we have." Clara moved to stand beside her, watching her flip pancakes with expert ease. "What can I do to help?" Grace's jaw tightened. "I told you I can manage." I know you can. But managing alone and having help are different things. Clara kept her voice gentle, even if the help is just setting the table or keeping the younger ones occupied. For a long moment, Grace didn't respond. Then, without looking at Clara, she jerked her head toward a cabinet. Plates are in there. Henry always forgets the forks. It wasn't much, but it was something. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Clara learned the layout of the house: the kitchen with its massive wood stove, the parlor with handmade furniture that spoke of love and skill, the bedrooms upstairs where each child had carved out their own small territory. She learned that Daniel took his role as protector, seriously positioning himself between his siblings and any perceived threat, including Clara. She learned that Henry could talk for hours about stars and maps and adventures he planned to have someday. She learned that Lucy's drawings were extraordinarily detailed for a 9-year-old, and that she used art the way other children used words. And she learned that Rosie, while silent, was always watching, always listening, always present on the edges of every interaction. By mid-morning, the boys had been dispatched to their chores, Daniel to the barn, Henry to feed the chickens, and Lucy had retreated to her room to draw. Grace was elbow-deep in bread dough, and Clara found herself alone in the parlor with Rosie. The little girl sat on the floor near the fireplace, arranging small stones in careful patterns. Clara sat in a nearby chair watching her work. "Those are beautiful patterns," Clara said softly. "Do they mean something?" Rosie didn't respond. Clara hadn't expected her to, but she picked up a particular stone and held it out for Clara to see. It was pink shot through with veins of white. "That one's special, isn't it?" Rosie nodded solemnly. "Did you find it somewhere important?" Another nod. Rosie pointed toward the window in the direction of the mountains. "Up in the mountains, you must have climbed very high to find something that beautiful." Rosie's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment Clara thought she might speak. But then the front door burst open, and Daniel stumbled in his face, pale with alarm. "Miss Bennet, one of the horses is sick. She's down in the barn and won't get up. Uncle Sam's not back yet, and I don't know what to do." Clara was on her feet instantly. "Show me." She followed Daniel at a run, not even stopping to grab her coat. The cold hit her like a physical blow, but she pushed through it, racing toward the barn, where she could hear distressed whinnying. The horse, a chestnut mare, was lying on her side in the stall. Her breathing labored, her eyes rolling with fear. Henry was already there, pressed against the wall, his face white. Clara knelt beside the mare, running her hands along the animal's flank. Her skin was hot, her muscles trembling. "How long has she been like this?" "I don't know," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "I found her this way when I came to feed her. Miss Bennet, that's Copper. She was my ma's horse. We can't lose her, too." Clara's heart clenched at the raw desperation in his voice. She might not know much about horses, but she knew illness. She knew fever. "Henry, run to the house and get Grace. Tell her to bring blankets and hot water. Daniel, I need you to stay calm. Copper can feel your fear. Talk to her. Tell her she's going to be all right." Both boys moved instantly, Henry sprinting for the house while Daniel dropped to his knees beside the mare's head. "It's okay, girl," he whispered, stroking her mane with a trembling hand. "It's okay. We're gonna help you." Clara examined the horse as best she could, checking her legs, her belly, her eyes. She wasn't a veterinarian, wasn't even close, but she'd helped her grandmother nurse sick animals on their small Pennsylvania farm when she was young. "She's colicking," Clara said, recognizing the symptoms. "Her digestion is blocked. We need to get her on her feet and walking." "She won't stand," Daniel said desperately. "I tried." "Then we'll try harder." Clara moved to the mare's head, positioning herself where she could help leverage the animal up. "On 3, we push together. 1, 2, 3. They pushed. The mare groaned but didn't move. "Again," Clara commanded. 1, 2, 3. This time Copper struggled her legs, scrambling against the hay-covered floor. Clara threw all her weight into the effort, and suddenly the horse was up, swaying, but standing. "Walk her," Clara ordered Daniel. "Keep her moving. Don't let her lie down again." Grace arrived moments later with blankets and a bucket of hot water, Lucy and Rosie trailing behind her. The older girl took in the situation with quick understanding. She's colicking. Yes, we need to keep her walking until she passes whatever's blocking her. I know what to do. Grace's voice was steady now, her earlier hostility forgotten in the face of crisis. Mama taught me. We need to massage her belly, help things move along. For the next hour, they worked together. Clara and Grace taking turns massaging the mare's flank, while Daniel walked her in endless circles around the barn. Henry fetched fresh water. Lucy kept the other horses calm with soft words and gentle touches. And Rosie. Rosie stood at Copper's head, her small hands pressed against the mare's cheek, her lips moving silently in what might have been words of comfort, or might have been prayer. When Sam finally returned, riding hard up the path, he found his niece and nephews, and the woman he barely knew, covered in sweat and hay, surrounding a horse that was finally eating again. "What happened?" he demanded, swinging down from his saddle. "Copper colicked," Daniel said, and there was a note of pride in his voice that hadn't been there before. "But we saved her. Miss Bennet knew what to do." Sam's eyes found Clara's across the barn. She was exhausted, filthy, and shivering from the cold she'd finally started to feel. "You saved my brother's horse," he said quietly. "We all did. The children knew more than I did. I just helped." Something shifted in Sam's expression. Something warm and wondering and grateful. "Thank you," he said, and then more softly, "Welcome to the family." Clara's throat closed up. She nodded, unable to speak, and turned away before anyone could see the tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. In the corner of her vision, she saw Rosie watching her with those dark, knowing eyes. The little girl lifted her hand in a small wave. And Clara, despite everything, despite the lies and the fear and the uncertain future stretching before her, felt something she hadn't felt in 3 long years. Hope. That night, after the children were in bed and the house had grown quiet, Clara sat in the parlor, darning one of Henry's socks while Sam worked on accounts at the small desk in the corner. The fire crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "You were good with them today," Sam said without looking up from his papers. "Not just with Copper, with all of them. Daniel's been carrying this weight trying to be the man of the house, but he listened to you, followed your lead. He's a good boy. He just needs someone to tell him it's all right to be a child sometimes." Sam set down his pen and turned to face her. "How'd you know what to do with the horse?" "My grandmother had a farm. I spent summers there as a girl, helping with the animals." Clara kept her eyes on her darning. "It was a long time ago." "You don't talk much about your past." Clara's hands stilled. "There's not much to tell." "I doubt that." Sam's voice was gentle. "But I won't push. We all have things we'd rather not discuss." The silence stretched between them, filled with the crackle of fire and the howl of wind outside. "Sam." Clara forced herself to look up to meet his eyes. "I need to tell you something. Before the wedding. Something important." He waited, his expression patient. Clara opened her mouth. The words were right there, balanced on the tip of her tongue. "I can't have children. I'm barren. I should have told you before I came, but I was afraid." A cry split the night air. Both of them were on their feet, instantly racing for the stairs. The cry came again, high and terrified, from Rosie's room. Clara reached the door first and threw it open. Rosie was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and unseeing, her mouth open in a silent scream. Nightmares, Clara realized. The ones Lucy had. The ones about the night their parents died. Clara crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered the small girl into her arms. "I'm here," she whispered. "You're safe. I've got you, Rosie. I've got you." Sam appeared in the doorway, his face creased with worry. Behind him, she could see the other children emerging from their rooms, drawn by the commotion. "It's all right," Clara called softly. "She's all right. Go back to bed, everyone. I'll stay with her." Grace hesitated, then nodded, and began herding the younger ones back to their rooms. Sam lingered in the doorway. "You sure?" I'm sure. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow. He nodded slowly, his eyes moving between Clara and the small girl trembling in her arms. Thank you, he said quietly, for being here. Then he was gone, pulling the door closed behind him, and Clara was alone with Rosie in the dark room, lit only by moonlight reflecting off snow. She held the child close, rocking her, gently humming a lullaby her grandmother had sung to her decades ago. And as Rosie's trembling subsided and her breathing deepened into sleep, Clara pressed her lips to the top of the little girl's head and made another silent vow. Tomorrow. She would tell Sam the truth tomorrow. Whatever happened after that, whatever consequences she had to face, these children would not suffer for her deception. She would make sure of it. Even if it meant losing everything she'd found. Tomorrow came and went. And the tomorrow after that. Clara found herself caught in the rhythm of ranch life, each day bringing new challenges that pushed the confession further from her lips. There was always something: a sick calf that needed tending, a fence that had collapsed under the weight of snow children who needed feeding and teaching and loving. And there was Sam. He watched her with those quiet eyes, never pushing, never demanding. But Clara felt the weight of his trust, like stones in her chest, growing heavier with each passing day. A week after her arrival, she stood at the kitchen window watching the children build a snow fort in the yard. Daniel was directing the construction with military precision, while Henry kept wandering off to examine interesting ice formations. Lucy was decorating the fort's entrance with carefully placed pine cones, and Rosie was looking at Clara through the window, her small face serious and knowing. She's attached to you. Clara turned to find Grace beside her, flour dusting her apron from the bread she'd been kneading. I'm attached to her too, Clara admitted. Grace was quiet for a moment. She had another nightmare last night. I heard you go to her. She shouldn't have to face those dreams alone. She's been facing them alone for 3 years. Grace's voice was carefully neutral. We all tried. Uncle Sam, me, even Dr. Mercer. She wouldn't let any of us close. But you've been here a week, and she's already... Grace stopped, her jaw tightening. Already what? Already looking at you like you hung the moon. Grace turned back to her bread, punching the dough with more force than necessary. I don't understand it. Clara chose her next words carefully. Maybe she just needed someone who understood what it feels like to be broken. Grace's hands stilled. She didn't look up, but her voice was softer when she spoke. You think she's broken? I think she's hurt. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed. Hurt things just need time and patience and someone who won't give up on them. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant shouts of the children outside and the crackle of the fire. My mother used to say something like that, Grace said finally. She said love was just patience with a pulse. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Grace resumed her kneading, but the violence had left her movements. The wedding's in 3 days. Are you ready? Clara's stomach clenched. I don't know if anyone's ever ready for something like that. Do you love him, Uncle Sam? The question caught Clara off guard. I respect him. I admire him. I think he's a good man. That's not what I asked. Clara turned back to the window, watching Rosie carefully stack snowballs in a perfect pyramid. Love takes time to grow, but I think there's something there that could become love, if we give it a chance. Grace nodded slowly. Fair enough. At least you're honest. The word hit Clara like a physical blow. Honest. If only Grace knew. I should go check on the children, Clara said, her voice thick. Make sure they're not freezing. She fled before Grace could see the guilt written across her face. The days blurred together in a haze of domesticity and growing affection. Clara learned to make biscuits the way the children liked them, golden brown and fluffy, served with honey from the Hendersons' farm down the road. She learned that Daniel relaxed his guard when she asked for his help, that Henry needed someone to listen to his dreams without judgment, that Lucy blossomed with gentle praise. And she learned that Rosie, while still silent, had 1,000 ways of communicating. A tug on Clara's sleeve meant, "Come see what I found." A small hand slipped into hers, meant, "I'm scared, but I trust you." A stone pressed into her palm meant, "You're special to me." Clara's collection of stones grew. She kept them in a small dish on her windowsill, each one a wordless gift from a child who had forgotten how to speak. 2 days before the wedding, Sam asked Clara to ride into town with him. "Need to pick up supplies," he said over breakfast. "Thought you might want to see the town proper. Meet some folks." "I'd like that," Clara replied, aware of Grace's watchful eyes across the table. The ride to Silver Creek took 45 minutes, the wagon jolting over frozen ruts, while Sam pointed out landmarks the creek that gave the town its name. The Henderson spread the old Miller cabin that had been abandoned years ago. "Town's not much," Sam said as they crested the final hill. "But the people are good. They'll want to meet you." Silver Creek was indeed small, a single main street lined with wooden buildings, a church steeple pointing toward gray skies, and a scattering of houses that seemed dwarfed by the mountains surrounding them. But there was a warmth to it, a sense of community that Clara had never felt in Philadelphia's grand streets. Their first stop was Morrison's General Store, where a portly man with a walrus mustache greeted Sam with a hearty handshake. "This the bride, then?" Mr. Morrison's eyes twinkled as he looked Clara over. "Well, Sam, you sure know how to pick 'em. Welcome to Silver Creek, Mrs. Callahan-to-be." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Call me Earl. Everyone does." He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Those children of yours, well, Sam's children, soon to be yours too. They're good kids. Been through hell, pardon my language, but good kids. They deserve a proper mother." Clara's throat tightened. "I'll do my best to be one." "That's all any of us can do." Earl patted her hand. "Now, what can I get you folks?" While Sam discussed his order with Earl, Clara wandered the store's narrow aisles, marveling at the variety of goods crammed into the small space. She was examining a bolt of blue fabric the same color as Lucy's eyes when a voice behind her made her jump. "You must be the Philadelphia bride." Clara turned to find a woman studying her with sharp, assessing eyes. She was tall and angular, with gray-streaked hair pulled back severely, and a medical bag clutched in one hand. "I'm Dr. Josephine Mercer," the woman continued. "But everyone calls me Doc Josie. I've been patching up the Callahan clan for years." "Clara Bennett, soon to be Callahan." "So I heard." Dr. Mercer circled Clara slowly like a predator sizing up potential prey. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more desperate, I suppose. Most mail-order brides have a certain look about them, defeat in their eyes. But you—" Dr. Mercer's head tilted. "You look like you're running from something." Clara's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" The doctor's smile was knowing. "I've been reading people for 30 years, Miss Bennett. I can spot a woman with secrets from 50 paces." She leaned closer. "Don't worry. I won't pry. We all have things we'd rather keep buried. Just make sure your secrets don't hurt those children. They've suffered enough." Before Clara could respond, Sam appeared at her elbow. "Doc Josie, didn't expect to see you in town today." "Making my rounds." Mercer's sharp expression softened slightly as she looked at Sam. "How's that shoulder healing?" "Fine. Clara's been helping with the exercises you recommended." "Has she now—" The doctor's eyes flicked to Clara with renewed interest. "Well then, I'll stop by after the wedding to check on things. Make sure everyone's adjusting." "You're welcome any time," Sam said. "You know that." Dr. Mercer nodded, gave Clara one last penetrating look, and swept out of the store, her black coat billowing behind her. "Don't mind Josie," Sam said quietly. "She's prickly, but she's got a good heart. Lost her husband young, raised 2 sons alone, then became a doctor when everyone said women couldn't. She's protective of the people she cares about." "I noticed." Sam's hand found the small of her back a warm pressure that sent unexpected shivers down her spine. "She'll come around. once she sees what I see. Clara wanted to ask what that was. She wanted to lean into his touch and believe that everything would be all right. But Dr. Mercer's words echoed in her mind. Make sure your secrets don't hurt those children. We should finish our errands, Clara said, stepping away from his hand. Grace will worry if we're late. If Sam noticed her withdrawal, he didn't comment. He simply nodded and guided her toward the door. But Clara felt his eyes on her back, questioning and concerned all the way home. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, listening to the wind howl against the windows and the creak of the old house settling around her. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow she would stand before God and this community and pledge herself to Samuel Callahan. And she still hadn't told him the truth. A soft knock on her door made her sit up. Come in. The door opened to reveal Sam holding a candle that cast dancing shadows across his face. Saw your light under the door, he said quietly. Couldn't sleep either. Too much on my mind. He hesitated in the doorway. Can I come in just to talk? I know it ain't proper, but... Come in. Clara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and gestured to the chair by the window. Sam sat down heavily, setting the candle on the windowsill. The flame flickered, illuminating the worry lines around his eyes. Having second thoughts, he asked. No. Are you? No. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it disheveled. But I want to make sure you know what you're getting into. This life, it ain't easy. The winters are brutal. The work never ends. And those children, they're wonderful, but they're also wounded. They'll test you, push you, try to drive you away because they're scared you'll leave like everyone else has. I'm not going anywhere, Sam. I hope not. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes finding hers in the candlelight. I need to tell you something I should have said in my letters. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. What is it? My wife, Mary, she died in childbirth. The baby, too. Sam's voice was steady, but Clara saw the old pain flickering in his eyes. I blamed myself for years. Thought if I'd gotten the doctor faster, done something different, maybe they'd still be alive. Sam, that wasn't your fault. I know that now. Took a long time to accept it, but I know. He exhaled slowly. What I'm trying to say is, I didn't advertise for a wife because I wanted more children. The ones I've got, William's children, they're enough. More than enough. I advertised because they need a mother and I need a partner. Someone to share this life with. Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes. Sam. Let me finish. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, but his touch was gentle. I don't know what you left behind in Philadelphia. I don't know what secrets you're carrying. But I want you to know whatever it is, it doesn't change what I see when I look at you. What do you see? Clara whispered. I see a woman who's strong enough to survive whatever broke her and brave enough to start over. I see someone who holds my niece through her nightmares and teaches my nephews to believe in themselves. I see... He paused, swallowing hard. I see the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was praying. The tears spilled over, running hot down Clara's cheeks. Tell him, her conscience screamed. Tell him now before it's too late. Sam, there's something I need to... A crash from downstairs cut her off. Both of them were on their feet instantly. Stay here, Sam ordered, but Clara was already following him down the stairs. They found Henry in the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass and spilled milk, his face white with terror. I'm sorry, he stammered. I couldn't sleep and I wanted some milk and the pitcher slipped and... It's all right, Sam said, his voice softening. It's just milk. Are you hurt? Henry shook his head, but his lower lip was trembling. I'm sorry, Uncle Sam. I know we can't waste food. I know... Clara knelt down beside him, heedless of the milk soaking into her nightgown. Henry, look at me. The boy's frightened eyes met hers. Accidents happen. Everyone spills things sometimes. You're not in trouble. But the milk can be replaced. You can't. Clara pulled him into a hug, feeling his small body tremble against hers. "You're more important than any pitcher of milk, Henry. Don't ever forget that." Henry's arms wrapped around her neck, clinging tight. "I miss my mama," he whispered, so quiet Clara almost didn't hear. "I know you do, sweetheart. I know." She held him while Sam quietly cleaned up the broken glass. Neither adult speaking, but something passing between them nonetheless. An understanding, a recognition that these midnight comforts, these small crises, these moments of vulnerability was what family meant. When Henry finally calmed down enough to return to bed, Clara walked him upstairs and tucked him in beside a still sleeping Daniel. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead and pressed a kiss to his brow. "Miss Clara." Henry's voice was drowsy. "Yes." "I'm glad you're marrying Uncle Sam. I'm glad you're going to be our mama." Clara's heart cracked open. "I'm glad too, Henry. Now sleep." She found Sam waiting in the hallway, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for how you handled that. He's a good boy. He just needed reassurance." "He needed you." Sam stepped closer, close enough that Clara could feel the heat radiating from his body. "We all do." For a moment, Clara thought he might kiss her. For a moment, she wanted him to. But he simply lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Clara. I'll see you tomorrow, at the altar." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the hall, leaving Clara alone with her racing heart and her unspoken secret. Tomorrow. She would tell him tomorrow after the wedding when they had time to talk properly. Or the day after. Or the day after that. The lies she told herself were almost as dangerous as the lies she was telling him. The wedding day dawned gray and cold, with heavy clouds threatening snow. Clara stood in her small room, staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror, while Grace fastened the buttons on her dress. The gown was simple blue wool, the fabric she'd admired at Morrison's store, but Grace and Lucy had worked secretly to add delicate embroidery around the collar and cuffs. Small white flowers stitched with care, and something that might have been hope. "You look beautiful," Lucy said from the doorway, her voice soft with awe. "Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for the embroidery. It's perfect." Lucy beamed a rare, full smile that transformed her thin face. Grace finished the last button and stepped back, her expression complicated. "Mama's dress was white," she said carefully, "when she married Papa, but she always said the color didn't matter. What mattered was the promise." Clara turned to face her. "I intend to keep my promises, Grace, to your uncle and to all of you." Something shifted in Grace's eyes. Not quite trust, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. "We'll see," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. The ceremony was held in the Callahan parlor, transformed by the children's efforts into something almost magical. Evergreen branches lined the mantel. Candles flickered on every surface. Lucy's drawings decorated the walls, pictures of the ranch, the mountains, the family she hoped they would become. Reverend Thomas Whitmore stood before the fireplace, his worn Bible open in his hands. His wife Alice sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Dr. Mercer stood near the back, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Sam waited by the fireplace in his best suit, his hair combed and his beard neatly trimmed. He looked nervous, more nervous than Clara had ever seen him, but when she appeared in the parlor doorway, his face transformed. The love in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. She didn't deserve it. She knew that, but God help her, she wanted it anyway. Daniel escorted her down the makeshift aisle, his young face solemn with the importance of his duty. Henry stood beside Sam as unofficial best man, practically vibrating with excitement. Lucy clutched a small bouquet of winter berries she'd gathered that morning. And Rosie. Rosie stood apart from the others, watching Clara with those dark, knowing eyes. In her hands, she held a small stone, white and smooth, and shaped almost like a heart. Clara reached her and stopped, bending down to Rosie's level. "Is that for me?" she whispered. Rosie nodded and pressed the stone into Clara's palm. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll treasure it forever. Rosie's face broke into that rare, brilliant smile. Then she did something she'd never done before. She threw her small arms around Clara's neck and squeezed tight. Clara heard Alice Whitmore gasp, heard Dr. Mercer's sharp intake of breath, felt Sam's eyes on her warm and wondering. But all she could focus on was the small body pressed against hers, the silent declaration of trust and love that meant more than any words could express. When Rosie finally released her, Clara straightened and turned to face Sam. "Ready?" he asked, extending his hand. "Ready." The ceremony was simple and sincere. Reverend Whitmore spoke about love and commitment, about the family they were forming, and the promises they were making. His words washed over Clara like water, some sinking and others sliding away. Then came the vows. "Do you, Samuel William Callahan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Sam's voice was steady, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. "And do you, Clara Elizabeth Bennett, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Clara's throat closed. The weight of her secret pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Tell him, her conscience screamed. Tell him before it's too late. But Rosie was watching her with those hopeful eyes. Daniel and Henry stood straight and proud, finally believing that their family might be whole again. Lucy clutched her berries and smiled through happy tears. Even Grace's armor had cracked enough to show something soft beneath. How could she destroy that? How could she shatter their hopes with the truth? "I do," Clara whispered. The words felt like both a promise and a betrayal. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Whitmore smiled warmly. "Sam, you may kiss your bride." Sam stepped forward, his hands gentle as they cupped her face. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and hope, and everything Clara didn't deserve. When they broke apart, the room erupted in applause and cheers. The children rushed forward, surrounding them with hugs and laughter. Alice Whitmore wept openly. Even Dr. Mercer's stern face had softened into something approaching approval. Clara smiled and laughed and accepted congratulations, playing the part of happy bride with practiced ease. But inside she was crumbling. She was Mrs. Samuel Callahan now, wife, stepmother, part of a family that had welcomed her with open arms and trusting hearts. And she was a liar. The secret that had driven her from Philadelphia was still there, coiled in her chest like a snake. Every smile, every embrace, every moment of happiness was poisoned by what she hadn't said. As the celebration continued around her, Clara caught Dr. Mercer's eyes across the room. The doctor raised her glass in a silent toast, but her expression was knowing. "Make sure your secrets don't hurt those children." Clara looked away, her heart pounding. She would tell Sam soon. She would find the right moment, the right words, and she would tell him everything. But not today. Today was for celebration. Tomorrow she would face the consequences of her lies. Tomorrow she would find out if the love they were building could survive the truth. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Neighbors arrived with food and well wishes. The Hendersons with a ham, the Millers with fresh bread, the Coopers with a cake that made the children's eyes go wide. The small parlor filled with laughter and conversation, the warmth of community wrapping around them like a blanket. Clara moved through it all in a daze, accepting congratulations, deflecting questions about her past with practiced vagueness, watching her new family with an ache in her chest that wouldn't fade. Sam stayed close, his hand finding hers whenever they were near each other. His touch was reassuring and proprietary. All at once, the touch of a husband, still new and strange and unexpectedly thrilling. When the last guests finally departed and the children were sent to bed, Clara found herself alone with Sam in the parlor, surrounded by the remnants of their celebration. "Mrs. Callahan," Sam said, testing the name. Mr. Callahan. He smiled, and the tenderness in his expression made Clara's heart ache. I've been thinking about that all day. How it would sound, how it would feel. And how does it feel? Right. He stepped closer, close enough to touch. It feels right, Clara. She should tell him now. They were alone. The moment was perfect. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. I'm tired, she whispered. It's been a long day. Something flickered in Sam's eyes. Disappointment maybe, or understanding. Of course. Our room is ready. Grace moved your things this afternoon. Our room. The word sent a shiver through Clara that was equal parts anticipation and terror. Sam, We don't have to rush anything. His voice was gentle. I know this is new. I know we're still strangers in some ways. We can take our time. Relief and guilt warred in Clara's chest. Thank you. No thanks needed. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste and sweet. Good night, Clara. Sleep well. Good night, Sam. She climbed the stairs alone, her legs heavy with exhaustion and dread. The room that had been Sam's, that was now theirs, waited at the end of the hall, the door slightly ajar. Clara paused outside Rosie's room first, listening for the sound of nightmares. But all was quiet. She crept the door open and saw the small figure curled peacefully under her blankets, one hand clutching the worn rabbit she slept with every night. Sleep well, little one, Clara whispered. I love you. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She froze, waiting for what she didn't know. But Rosie just sighed in her sleep and burrowed deeper into her pillow. Clara closed the door softly and continued down the hall to face her wedding night, her new life, and the weight of all the things she hadn't said. 3 weeks passed in a blur of domesticity and growing love. Clara settled into her role as wife and mother with a ease that surprised even herself. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings, the endless chores, the quiet evenings by the fire, with Sam's hand warm in hers. She learned which child needed what kind of attention, when to push, and when to hold back, how to navigate the delicate balance of authority and affection. And she learned to love Samuel Callahan. It happened gradually in small moments she didn't recognize until they'd already taken root. The way he brought her coffee each morning before she even asked. The patient way he helped Daniel work through his frustrations. The gentleness in his voice when he spoke to Rosie, never demanding words she couldn't give. The quiet strength he showed when the work was hard and the days were long. She loved him. God help her, she loved him completely. Which made the secret she carried feel like a knife lodged between her ribs, twisting deeper with every passing day. You're quiet tonight. Clara looked up from her mending to find Sam watching her from his chair by the fire. The children were in bed, the house settled into its nighttime creaks and sighs. Just thinking, she said. About what? About the lie I'm living. About the words I can't seem to say. About how much it will hurt when you finally know the truth. About how happy I am, she said instead. It wasn't entirely a lie. Sam's face softened. He set aside the harness he'd been repairing and crossed to kneel beside her chair. I'm happy too, Clara. Happier than I've been in years. He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. The children are thriving. Grace actually smiled at breakfast yesterday. Daniel stopped trying to be a man and started being a boy again. And Rosie. Rosie's getting better, Clara agreed. The little girl still didn't speak, but her silences had become comfortable rather than desperate. She laughed now, a sound like bells that made everyone in the room stop and listen. She sought out Clara for hugs and comfort, no longer hovering on the edges of the family, but planted firmly in its heart. Because of you, Sam said. All of this is because of you. The knife twisted deeper. Sam, I need to tell you something. The words came out before she could stop them. Her heart hammered against her ribs as Sam's expression shifted from tenderness to concern. What is it? A scream split the night. They were both on their feet before the echo faded, racing for the stairs. Clara recognized that scream, high and terrified and full of pain. Lucy. They found her in her room, thrashing in her bed, her small body burning with fever. Grace was already there, holding her sister's hand, her face white with fear. She was fine at supper. Grace said, her voice cracking. She said her throat hurt a little, but I thought I didn't think. It's not your fault. Sam was already lifting Lucy into his arms. Clara, get water and cloths. Grace, ride for Dr. Mercer. Fast as you can. The next hours passed in a nightmare of fever and fear. Lucy's temperature climbed despite their efforts to cool her. She drifted in and out of consciousness, crying out for her mother, her real mother, the one who died 3 years ago and left her children behind. Clara held her through the worst of it, singing the same lullabies she'd sung to Rosie, whispering promises she prayed she could keep. Don't leave me. Lucy whimpered, her small hand clutching Clara's with surprising strength. Please don't leave me, Mama. Clara's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I'm right here. I've got you. Dr. Mercer arrived just before dawn, her medical bag in hand, and her expression grim. She examined Lucy with quick, competent hands, while Clara hovered nearby, unable to stay away. Scarlet fever, Dr. Mercer announced finally, and Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Scarlet fever, the same disease that had killed Lucy's parents. What do we do? Sam's voice was steady, but Clara saw the fear in his eyes. Keep her cool, keep her hydrated, pray. Dr. Mercer's tone was blunt. I won't lie to you, Sam. This is serious. The next few days will tell us which way it goes. She's going to be fine. Clara heard herself speaking, her voice fierce with determination. She has to be fine. Dr. Mercer turned to look at her, something sharp and assessing in her gaze. Mrs. Callahan, may I speak with you privately? Clara's stomach dropped. Of course. They stepped into the hallway, leaving Sam to sit vigil at Lucy's bedside. Dr. Mercer closed the door behind them and fixed Clara with a penetrating stare. I need to ask you some questions, medical questions, for Lucy's treatment. Anything. Has anyone else in the household been sick? Any fevers, sore throats, unusual symptoms? No, nothing. What about you? Any health concerns I should know about? Clara's mouth went dry. I don't understand what that has to do with Lucy. Scarlet fever can spread quickly through a household. If there are any complications with your health, I need to know, for everyone's safety. The way she said complications made Clara's blood turn to ice. She knows. Somehow she knows. Dr. Mercer, I'm not asking for details. The doctor's voice softened slightly. Not yet. But I've been practicing medicine for 30 years, Mrs. Callahan. I've learned to recognize when a woman is carrying more than she's telling. Clara couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up entirely. Whatever your secret is, it's eating you alive. I can see it in your eyes, in the way you hold yourself, in the guilt that shadows your face every time your husband looks at you with love. Dr. Mercer stepped closer. I don't know what you're hiding, but I know this secrets have a way of coming out, and the longer you wait, the worse the damage. I can't, Clara's voice broke. If you don't tell him, someone else will, or he'll figure it out on his own. And that betrayal will be far worse than whatever truth you're hiding. Tears burned Clara's eyes. You don't understand. He wants a family. A real family. And I can never... The words stuck in her throat, but Dr. Mercer's expression shifted with sudden understanding. You're barren. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded, a sob escaping despite her best efforts to hold it back. There was an illness. Years ago. The doctors said... They said I could never have children. I should have told Sam before I came here. I should have told him before the wedding, but I was so afraid he wouldn't want me if he knew. And then I met the children, and I fell in love with them. And I thought if I could just prove myself, if I could show him what a good mother I could be to the children he already has. You thought he'd forgive the lie? Yes. The word came out as a whisper. Dr. Mercer was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed, and some of the sharpness left her posture. I understand desperation, Mrs. Callahan. I understand doing whatever it takes to survive. But those children in there have already lost everyone they loved. They've given you their trust, a precious, fragile thing that took 3 years to rebuild. If you shatter that trust with this lie... I know. Clara wiped her eyes with shaking hands. I know what I have to do. I just don't know how to do it. You open your mouth and you tell the truth. It's that simple. And that hard. A sound from Lucy's room, a low cry of distress, pulled them both back to the present. We'll talk more later, Dr. Mercer said. Right now, that child needs you. Go. Clara went. The next 3 days were the longest of Clara's life. Lucy's fever climbed and fell and climbed again. The rash spread across her small body like wildfire. She cried for her mother, for her father, for people who couldn't answer anymore. And Clara stayed by her side through all of it, bathing her forehead, dripping water between her cracked lips, singing until her voice gave out. The other children hovered at the edges of the sick room, terrified, and trying not to show it. Daniel took over the ranch chores with grim determination. Henry stopped talking about stars and maps and adventures. Grace barely left the kitchen cooking meals that no one had appetite to eat. And Rosie. Rosie sat outside Lucy's door every night, her back against the wall, her small hands folded in her lap. Silent and watchful and waiting. On the third night, when Lucy's fever finally broke and the doctor declared her out of danger, Clara collapsed into a chair and wept with relief. She's going to be all right, Sam said, kneeling beside her. Thanks to you. Thanks to Dr. Mercer. Josie gave her medicine. You gave her hope. Sam's hand cupped her cheek, wiping away her tears. I watched you, Clara. 3 days and nights you never left her side, never gave up. Even when things looked darkest, you kept fighting for her. Clara couldn't meet his eyes. She needed me. She needed her mother. And that's who you've been, not just to Lucy, but to all of them. Sam's voice cracked with emotion. I chose better than I knew when I answered your letter. You're everything I prayed for, and more. The words were like knives. Sam, please. I love you, Clara. Time stopped. She looked at him, then really looked, and saw the truth of it written across his face. Love, complete and unconditional, and utterly undeserved. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Something I should have told you before I ever got on that train. Sam's expression grew serious. What is it? Clara opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a small voice cut through the silence. Mama. They both turned toward the sound. Rosie stood in the doorway, her dark eyes wide and uncertain. Her lips were moving, forming shapes they hadn't formed in 3 years. Mama, she said again, louder this time. Is Lucy going to be okay? Clara heard Sam's sharp intake of breath, heard Grace cry out from somewhere behind Rosie, heard the thud of running footsteps as the boys came to investigate. But all she could see was Rosie. Rosie, who hadn't spoken a word since the night her parents died. Rosie, who had communicated through stones and gestures and silent gifts. Rosie, who was now looking at Clara with those huge dark eyes and asking the question that had been trapped inside her for 3 years. Clara crossed the room and dropped to her knees in front of the little girl. Lucy's going to be just fine, sweetheart. The fever broke. She's going to get better. Rosie's face crumpled with relief. I was so scared. I tried to talk, but the words wouldn't come, and I was so scared that she'd go away like Mama and Papa, and... She dissolved into tears, and Clara gathered her close, holding her tight, while she sobbed out 3 years of grief and fear and silence. I've got you, Clara murmured. You're safe. Lucy's safe. We're all safe. Don't leave us. Rosie cried, her small voice muffled against Clara's shoulder. Please don't ever leave us. Clara's heart broke all over again. I won't leave you, Rosie. I promise. It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. But in that moment, with this child in her arms, and the weight of her secret crushing her chest, Clara knew one thing with absolute certainty. She couldn't keep lying. Not anymore. Not to these children who had given her their trust. Not to the man who had given her his heart. The truth would come out tonight. Whatever happened after that, whatever consequences she had to face, at least she would finally be free. The celebration of Rosie's breakthrough lasted into the evening. The children gathered around their youngest sister, marveling at her voice, listening to words that had been locked away for 3 years pour out like water from a broken dam. Rosie talked about everything: the horses, the snow, the stars. Henry had shown her. The drawings Lucy made, the biscuits Grace baked. She talked about Uncle Sam and how he told the best stories. She talked about Clara and how she smelled like lavender and always knew when Rosie needed a hug. She talked about her mama and papa, about the night they got sick, about how scared she'd been when they stopped answering her calls, and finally, exhausted from 3 years of words spoken in a single evening, she fell asleep in Clara's arms, her small hand clutching a fold of Clara's dress. Clara carried her to bed and tucked her in, carefully pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I love you, little one," she whispered. "Whatever happens, know that I love you." She found Sam waiting in the hallway, his expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "That was a miracle," he said quietly. "What you did for her. I didn't do anything. She did it herself. She just needed to know it was safe. She needed you." Sam reached for her hand. "Clara, I know you wanted to tell me something earlier. Before Rosie." "Yes." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Can we talk in private?" They retreated to their bedroom, the room that had become theirs, filled with Clara's books and Sam's presence and the mingled sense of their shared life. Clara stood by the window watching snow fall softly in the darkness, while Sam sat on the edge of the bed and waited. "I don't know how to say this," Clara began. "Just say it. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." "You might not want to figure it out. You might—" Her voice cracked. "You might want me gone after you hear what I have to tell you." Sam's expression shifted to alarm. "Clara, what?" "I'm barren." The word hung in the air between them like a blade. "I can't have children. Ever. There was an illness when I was 19, typhoid fever. The doctor said the damage was permanent." Clara forced herself to keep talking to get it all out before she lost her nerve. "That's why I was available to answer your advertisement. No man in Philadelphia would have me after my fiancé broke our engagement. I was considered damaged goods, worthless, a burden to be pitied." Sam hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. His face was utterly still. "I should have told you in my letters. I should have told you before the wedding, but I was so desperate for a second chance, and your advertisement said you had 5 children already, and I thought if I could prove myself, if I could show you what a good mother I could be. You lied to me." Sam's voice was flat, emotionless. Clara had never heard him sound like that before, and it terrified her more than anger would have. "Yes. You came into my home, into my family, knowing you were deceiving us. Yes. You let me fall in love with you. Let me believe—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "You let those children love you, trust you, and the whole time you were lying. I'm sorry." The words felt pathetically inadequate. "I'm so sorry, Sam. I never meant—" "What did you mean?" He was on his feet now, his voice rising. "What exactly was your plan to keep lying forever, to let me spend the rest of my life believing I knew the woman I married?" "I was going to tell you. I tried to tell you so many times. But you didn't. You let me stand before God and make vows to a woman who doesn't exist." The accusation hit Clara like a physical blow. "I'm still me. Everything else I've told you is true. My past, my feelings, my love for you, and the children. How can I believe that? How can I believe anything you say?" Clara had no answer. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, as Sam paced the room like a caged animal. "Did you ever think about what this would do to them?" he demanded. "To the children. They've already lost everyone who was supposed to love them. They finally started to trust again, to believe that maybe they could have a real family, and now... He stopped pressing his hands against his eyes. "Sam, please. I need time." His voice was raw with pain. "I need to think. I can't look at you right now." He left without another word, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Clara heard the front door open and close, heard the crunch of boots on snow as he walked into the night. She sank to the floor and wept. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, watching for Sam's return, her mind cycling through every worst-case scenario. He would send her away. He would tell the children she was a liar. Rosie would stop speaking again. Lucy would think Clara had abandoned her. Grace would have been right all along not to trust. Everything she had built, everything she had loved would crumble to dust. And it would be her fault. Only hers. Sam came back just before dawn. Clara heard him moving around downstairs, heard the clink of a coffee cup, the creak of his chair. But he didn't come upstairs, didn't come to their room. When morning light finally broke through the clouds, Clara washed her face, straightened her dress, and went down to face whatever came next. She found Sam in the kitchen, sitting at the table, with his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He looked up when she entered, and Clara saw the evidence of his own sleepless night in the shadows under his eyes. "The children will be up soon," he said quietly. "We need to decide what to tell them." "Whatever you think is best." "What I think is best." A bitter laugh escaped him. "I don't know what's best anymore. I thought I knew who you were. I thought I knew what we were building together. Now I don't know anything." Clara sat down across from him, keeping the width of the table between them. "I understand if you want me to leave." "Is that what you want to leave?" "No." The word came out fierce and desperate. "I want to stay. I want to be their mother. I want to be your wife. But not like this, not with lies between us. If you can't forgive me, if you can't trust me again, then I'll go. But Sam..." Her voice broke. "Please don't punish the children for my mistakes. Please don't take their mother away because I was too much of a coward to tell the truth." Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. 3 years ago, those children lost everything. I watched them grieve, watched them build walls around their hearts, watched them forget how to trust. And then you came. You broke through those walls like they were made of paper. You gave them hope again. You gave me hope. I'm sorry. Let me finish." He took a deep breath. "You lied to me. You broke my trust. And that hurts more than I can tell you. But..." He paused, struggling with the words. "You also saved Copper's life. You held Lucy through her fever. You gave Rosie her voice back. Those things weren't lies. Those things were real." Clara held her breath. "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I know this: if I send you away, it won't just break your heart. It'll break theirs. And I've spent 3 years trying to put those children back together. I won't shatter them again." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we take it one day at a time. I'm saying we don't make any decisions we can't take back. I'm saying..." He finally looked at her. Really looked, and she saw the war in his eyes, hurt and anger and love all tangled together. "I'm saying you're their mother. Whatever else happens between us, you're their mother. And I won't take that away from them." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was a chance, a fragile, precious chance that Clara didn't deserve, but would fight with everything she had to earn. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." Sam pushed back from the table and stood. "We have a long way to go before we're back to where we were, if we ever get there at all." He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Clara alone with her cold coffee and her desperate hope. A long way to go. She would walk every step of it if she had to. She would prove herself. She would earn back his trust, rebuild what her lies had damaged, become worthy of the love these children had given her. No matter how long it took. No matter what it cost. The days that followed were the hardest of Clara's life. Sam kept his word. He didn't send her away. But the easy warmth between them had vanished, replaced by a careful politeness that cut deeper than anger would have. He spoke to her about practical matters, The children's needs ranch business household concerns, but the intimate conversations they'd shared by the fire were gone. The gentle touches, the knowing looks, the quiet moments of connection all gone. Clara threw herself into the work of the household with desperate energy. She woke before dawn to start breakfast. She helped Grace with the endless laundry. She tutored the boys in their studies, sat with Lucy, while she held Rosie close whenever the little girl sought her out. The children mercifully seemed unaware of the rift between the adults. They continued to seek Clara's attention, to call her Mama, to trust her with their fears and hopes and daily dramas. Their love was the only thing keeping Clara from shattering completely. 2 weeks after her confession, Dr. Mercer stopped by to check on Lucy's recovery. "She's doing well," the doctor announced after her examination. "Another week of rest, and she'll be good as new." "Thank God," Clara breathed. Dr. Mercer studied her with those sharp eyes. "You look terrible." "I haven't been sleeping well." "I imagine not." The doctor glanced toward the window where Sam was visible, crossing the yard toward the barn. "He knows then." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. "And he hasn't sent me away, but he hasn't forgiven me either." Dr. Mercer was quiet for a moment. "Forgiveness takes time, Mrs. Callahan. Trust takes longer. But I've known Sam Callahan for 10 years, and I've never seen him love anything the way he loves those children. If he's keeping you here for their sake, it's because he sees what I see, that you're the best thing that's ever happened to them. I don't deserve them." "Maybe not. But they need you anyway." Dr. Mercer gathered her medical bag. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself and start earning what you want. Sam's a fair man. He'll come around eventually if you give him reason to." She left Clara standing in the hallway, her words echoing in the silence. Earn what you want. Clara had been so focused on her guilt, her shame, her fear of losing everything that she'd forgotten the most important thing. She couldn't undo the lie she'd told. But she could prove every single day that the woman Sam had married was real, that her love for him and his children was real, that she was worthy of a second chance. She found Sam in the barn that evening, repairing a broken bridle by lamplight. "Can I help?" she asked from the doorway. He glanced up, surprise flickering across his face. "You know anything about leather work?" "No, but I can learn." For a long moment he just looked at her. Then wordlessly, he shifted over on the bench and handed her a strip of leather and a needle. "Start with a simple stitch, like this." He showed her the technique, his hands sure and patient. Clara focused on the work, on the feel of the leather beneath her fingers, on the quiet companionship of working beside him. They didn't talk about the secret. Didn't talk about forgiveness or trust or the future. They just sat together in the lamplight, stitching leather and listening to the horses shift in their stalls. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The weeks that followed brought a gradual thaw. Sam began seeking Clara out for small tasks, mending that needed doing, decisions about the children's schooling plans for the spring planting. The conversations were practical at first, but slowly, tentatively, they began to include other things. Observations about the children's progress. Memories of Christmases past. Quiet jokes that made Clara's heart leap with hope. She didn't push, didn't ask for more than he was willing to give. She simply showed up day after day, being the wife and mother she'd promised to be. The children flourished under her care. Daniel's shoulders gradually lost their defensive hunch. Henry's imagination soared, filling notebooks with stories and maps and dreams. Lucy's drawings grew bolder, more colorful, as if her brush was finally free to capture the joy she felt. And Rosie. Rosie talked constantly, making up for 3 years of silence with an endless stream of observations, questions, and declarations of love. Grace remained the holdout. The oldest girl had sensed the tension between the adults, even if she didn't understand its source. She watched Clara with wary eyes, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "She's afraid you'll leave," Sam said one evening, reading Clara's thoughts. "She's been waiting for you to disappoint her since the day you arrived." "I won't disappoint her." "I know." He paused, and something in his expression shifted. "I'm starting to believe that." Clara's heart stuttered. "Sam, don't." He held up a hand. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but I wanted you to know I see what you're doing. I see how hard you're trying. And it matters. It was the closest thing to hope she'd felt in weeks. Spring came slowly to Montana, the snow retreating inch by reluctant inch as the days grew longer. With it came the endless work of ranching calving season fence repairs, preparing fields for planting. Clara threw herself into every task, learning skills she'd never imagined needing in her Philadelphia life. She learned to milk cows and gather eggs. She learned to preserve meat and vegetables for the lean months. She learned to read the weather in the clouds and the animals' behavior. And she learned gradually that she was capable of far more than she'd ever believed. One afternoon in late March, Clara was hanging laundry when the sound of approaching hooves made her look up. A man on horseback was riding toward the house, a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that might have been handsome if not for the cruel set of his mouth. He reined in his horse a few feet from where Clara stood, looking down at her with obvious contempt. "You must be the mail-order bride," he said. Clara straightened her shoulders. "I'm Clara Callahan. And you are Jacob Stone. I own the ranch north of here." His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Heard Sam finally found someone desperate enough to take him on. Didn't expect her to be so plain. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Stone?" "I came to see Sam. Business matter." He dismounted, not waiting for an invitation. "Where is he?" "In the north pasture. He should be back within the hour, if you'd like to wait." "I'll wait inside." "No." The word came out sharper than Clara intended. "You won't." Stone's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me. This is my home, Mr. Stone. You don't enter without an invitation. And you haven't been invited." Something dangerous flickered in Stone's eyes. "You've got nerve, I'll give you that. Most women know their place around here." "My place is protecting this family. If you have business with my husband, you can wait on the porch or come back another time." For a long moment, Stone just stared at her. Then a slow, unpleasant smile spread across his face. "Sam's got more than he bargained for with you, doesn't he? The meek little bride from back east turns out she's got claws." He stepped closer, close enough that Clara could smell the whiskey on his breath. "I wonder what other surprises you're hiding." Clara held her ground, though her heart was pounding. "I think you should leave, Mr. Stone." "Mama!" Rosie's voice came from the porch, small and scared. Clara glanced over to see all 5 children standing there watching with wide eyes. "It's all right, sweetheart. Mr. Stone was just leaving." Stone followed her gaze to the children, and something ugly crossed his face when he saw them. "The orphan brood. Your brothers get, aren't they, Sam?" Clara hadn't heard Sam approach, but suddenly he was there, stepping between Stone and Clara with a controlled violence in every line of his body. "Get off my land, Jacob. Just paying a neighborly visit." "There's nothing neighborly about you. Get off my land before I put you off." Stone laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Still playing father to William's brats, I see. And now you've got yourself a barren mail-order bride to help." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. How did he know? How could he possibly know? Sam went very still. "What did you say?" "Oh, didn't she tell you?" Stone's smile was vicious with triumph. "I have friends in Philadelphia. Did some checking on your new wife after I heard about the wedding. Seems she's damaged goods, couldn't give her fancy fiancé babies, so he threw her out like yesterday's trash. That's why she ended up out here desperate enough to marry a stranger." Sam's fist connected with Stone's jaw before Clara could even process what was happening. Stone staggered back, caught off guard by the blow. Blood trickled from his split lip. For a moment, Clara thought he would retaliate. His hand moved toward the gun at his hip, but something in Sam's expression made him reconsider. "You've made an enemy today, Callahan," Stone spat, mounting his horse. "You and your barren bride and those orphan brats. You'll regret this." He rode off in a cloud of dust, leaving silence in his wake. Clara stood frozen, unable to meet Sam's eyes. The children hadn't moved from the porch. They'd heard everything. Every cruel word, every vicious revelation. "Children." Sam's voice was steady. "Go inside." "But, Papa," Daniel started. "Inside, now." They went, casting worried glances over their shoulders. Grace was the last to go, her face white with shock. When they were alone, Sam turned to Clara. "I knew," he said quietly. "What?" "I knew he'd try something like this. Jacob Stone has hated me since I wouldn't sell him our water rights. He's been waiting for a chance to hurt us." Sam's jaw tightened. "I didn't expect him to go digging into your past." "Sam, I'm so sorry. The children, they heard a mean, bitter man try to hurt their mother. That's what they heard." Sam reached for her hands, and Clara was shocked to feel them trembling. "Clara, look at me." She forced her eyes up to meet his. "What Stone said about you being damaged, about you being trash, that's a lie. You understand me? That's a lie from a hateful man who wanted to cause pain. But I am barren. I can't. You can't bear children. That's not the same as being damaged." Sam's grip tightened on her hands. "I watched you stand up to him. I watched you protect this family without a second thought. That's not a damaged woman. That's a warrior." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "You hit him. You could have been hurt. He insulted my wife. He threatened my children. There's not a jury in Montana that would convict me." A ghost of a smile crossed Sam's face. "Besides, I've been wanting to hit Jacob Stone for about 10 years now. Today seemed like a good day." Despite everything, Clara laughed, a wet, broken sound that released some of the tension coiled in her chest. "We need to talk to the children," she said. "We will, together." Sam's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "But first, Clara, I need to say something." She waited, hardly daring to breathe. "I've been carrying this anger around for weeks. Anger at you for lying. Anger at myself for not seeing it. Anger at the whole damn situation. But watching you these past months, watching you love those children, watching you work yourself to the bone to earn our trust back." He paused, struggling with the words. "You made a mistake. A big one. But you've been paying for it every day since, and I'm tired of punishing you. I'm tired of punishing both of us." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I forgive you." His voice cracked on the words. "I'm saying I want to try again. Really try. Not this careful politeness we've been doing, but a real marriage, a real partnership." Clara couldn't speak. The tears were coming too fast. Sam pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "I love you, Clara Callahan. I loved you before I knew the truth, and I love you still. Nothing you told me changed, that I was just too stubborn and hurt to admit it." "I love you too," Clara sobbed against his shoulder. "I love you so much." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, while the spring wind swirled around them and the weight of weeks of silence finally lifted. The conversation with the children happened that evening, gathered around the kitchen table. Clara told them the truth, all of it. About the illness that had stolen her ability to have children. About Edward and the broken engagement. About the shame that had driven her from Philadelphia. About the lie she'd told their uncle because she was afraid of being rejected again. She told them she was sorry. Sorry for deceiving them. Sorry for not trusting them with the truth from the beginning. And then she weighted her heart in her throat for their verdict. Daniel spoke first. "So you can't have babies. Your own babies, I mean." "That's right. But you can still be our mama. If you'll have me." Daniel exchanged a look with his siblings, some silent communication that passed between them in an instant. Then he nodded firmly. "We don't need more brothers and sisters. We've got enough. What we need is you." Henry jumped in eagerly. "Daniel's right. You're the best mama we could have. You help me with my star maps, and you don't laugh when I talk about exploring, and you held me when I was sick," Lucy added quietly. "You sang to me. You didn't leave." "You gave me my words back," Rosie whispered. "You made me feel safe enough to talk again." All eyes turned to Grace. The eldest girl had been silent throughout the conversation, her expression unreadable. Now she stood, slowly, walked around the table, and stopped in front of Clara. I knew something was wrong, Grace said. I could tell you were hiding something. I thought... She swallowed hard. I thought you were going to leave us, like everyone else. I'm not leaving, Grace. I know that now. Grace's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Mama. My real mama. She used to say that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing each other every single day. You've chosen us, Clara. Every day since you got here, you've chosen us. I have. Then I choose you too. Grace's voice broke. I choose you to be my mother. Clara opened her arms, and Grace fell into them, this fierce, guarded girl who had been waiting so long for permission to trust again. The other children piled on, surrounding them in a tangle of arms and tears and laughter. Sam stood at the edge of the circle, watching his family with eyes that shone. Room for one more? He asked. They pulled him in, and for a moment the Callahan family stood wrapped around each other, whole and healing, and finally complete. The weeks that followed brought changes Clara never expected. Word of Jacob Stone's visit spread through town, as gossip always did. But instead of the condemnation, Clara feared she found unexpected support. Mrs. Henderson stopped by with a pie and a fierce declaration that Jacob Stone was a snake in boots who's had it coming for years. The Millers brought gifts for the children and stayed for coffee, asking Clara's advice about their daughter's upcoming wedding. Even the standoffish Mrs. Cooper from the general store softened, pressing a length of beautiful blue ribbon into Clara's hands for the little one's hair. The turning point came at Sunday services 3 weeks after Stone's confrontation. Clara walked into church on Sam's arm, her head high, despite the whispers she could hear rippling through the congregation. The children filed in behind them, Grace carrying Rosie on her hip, the boys scrubbed and combed to within an inch of their lives. Reverend Whitmore greeted them warmly. The Callahan family, how wonderful to see you all. Reverend. Sam shook his hand. Fine morning for worship. Indeed it is. Whitmore's eyes moved to Clara, kind and understanding. Mrs. Callahan, I hope you're settling in well. Silver Creek is lucky to have you. Thank you, Reverend. I'm lucky to be here. As they moved toward their pew, Clara noticed Jacob Stone sitting near the back, his jaw still bruised from Sam's punch. His eyes followed her with undisguised hatred. She met his gaze and held it. She would not be intimidated. She would not be shamed. She had faced worse than Jacob Stone and survived. She would survive this too. After the service, Dr. Mercer cornered Clara in the churchyard. I heard about your visitor, the doctor said without preamble. Stone's been telling anyone who'll listen about your condition. Clara's stomach tightened. And most folks don't give a damn. Dr. Mercer's mouth twitched. You know what they care about. They care that you nursed Lucy through scarlet fever. They care that you gave Rosie her voice back. They care that Sam Callahan looks happier than he has in years. She leaned closer. They care that you're part of this community now, and Jacob Stone can go hang. Relief washed through Clara so powerfully, she had to grab the fence for support. I was so afraid. That's your Philadelphia talking. Out here we judge people by what they do, not what they can't. And you, Mrs. Callahan, have done plenty. Dr. Mercer's expression softened. Now I have a proposal for you. I'm getting too old to make house calls all over this territory by myself. I need an assistant, someone with steady hands and a calm head in emergencies. Clara blinked. You want me to help you? I want you to learn. Medicine, nursing, whatever you can absorb. God knows this territory needs more healers, and you've got the temperament for it. Dr. Mercer fixed her with that penetrating stare. What do you say? Clara looked across the churchyard to where Sam stood talking with a group of ranchers, the children playing around his feet. This man who had forgiven her. This family who had chosen her. This community that was accepting her despite everything. She turned back to Dr. Mercer with a smile that felt like sunrise. When do I start? 3 years passed like water over stones, smoothing the rough edges of their lives into something beautiful. Clara marked the time and milestones: Lucy's first painting sold to a Denver collector, Henry's acceptance into a correspondence course in astronomy, Daniel's transformation from angry boy to capable young man. She marked it in Grace's graduation from the Cedar Ridge School and her announcement that she wanted to become a teacher. She marked it in Rosie's endless chatter in the thousands of words that had been locked away for 3 years and now flowed like rivers. Most of all, she marked it in the quiet moments with Sam, mornings on the porch, watching the sun rise, evenings by the fire, with his hand warm in hers, nights when he held her close and whispered that she was everything he'd ever wanted. The woman who had stepped off that train in Silver Creek, clutching her shameful secret like a shield, was gone. In her place stood Clara Callahan, wife, mother, healer, a woman who had learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up day after day and choosing each other through the hard times and the good. Dr. Mercer had kept her promise. 3 afternoons a week, Clara rode into town to assist at the clinic, learning everything the older doctor could teach her. She learned to set broken bones and stitch wounds, to identify infections and mix medicines to comfort the dying and celebrate the living. She discovered skills she'd never known she possessed: steady hands, a calm voice in crisis, an instinct for reading symptoms that Dr. Mercer said couldn't be taught. "You're a natural," the doctor told her one afternoon, after a particularly difficult childbirth. "Better than most trained physicians I've known. I had a good teacher." "Don't sell yourself short." Dr. Mercer fixed her with that penetrating stare. "You've saved lives, Clara. Real lives that would have been lost without your skill. That's not nothing." It wasn't nothing. Clara knew that now. She'd delivered 17 babies in the past 2 years, each one a miracle that reminded her of what she couldn't have and what she'd been given instead. She'd nursed families through influenza outbreaks, treated children for everything from broken arms to scarlet fever, held the hands of the dying when no one else would. She couldn't give Sam children of her own, but she could give life to others, and somehow that was enough. The spring of 1894 brought changes no one expected. It started with a letter from Philadelphia, the first communication Clara had received from her former life in 3 years. She recognized her mother's handwriting on the envelope and nearly threw it away unopened. "You should read it," Sam said when she showed him. "Whatever's in there, we'll face it together." Clara opened the letter with trembling hands. Her mother was dying. Cancer, the doctors said. A few months at most. She wanted to see Clara before the end. She wanted to apologize. Clara stared at the words until they blurred. Her mother, who had called her damaged goods. Her mother, who had looked at her with pity and disappointment. Her mother, who had let her leave for Montana without a single word of goodbye. "What do you want to do?" Sam asked quietly. "I don't know. Do you want to see her?" Clara thought about it. Really thought, turning the question over in her mind like one of Rosie's stones. Did she want to see the woman who had made her feel worthless? Did she want to travel 2,000 miles to hear apologies that came years too late? "No," she said finally. "She's my mother, but she stopped being my family the day I left Philadelphia. You're my family now, you and the children." Sam nodded slowly. "Then write her back. Tell her what you need to tell her, but don't go out of obligation to someone who never showed you love." Clara wrote the letter that night, sitting at the kitchen table, while the house slept around her. She told her mother about her life in Montana, about Sam and the children, about her work as a healer, about the community that had accepted her when her own family hadn't. She told her about the woman she had become, so different from the broken girl who had boarded a train 3 years ago. And then she told her mother that she forgave her, not for her mother's sake, but for her own. She forgave her because carrying that anger had been a weight she no longer wanted to bear. She sealed the letter and gave it to Sam to mail the next morning. Her mother died 6 weeks later. Clara received word through a terse telegram from a lawyer, no personal message, no final words from the woman who had given her life. Just a notification of death and a request to contact the office regarding the estate. Clara burned the telegram and didn't look back. Summer brought the annual Silver Creek celebration, and this year Clara found herself at the center of it. The town council had decided to honor Dr. Mercer's 30 years of service with a special ceremony. But when Reverend Whitmore stood up to speak, it wasn't just Dr. Mercer he praised. "Our community has been blessed these past 3 years with not one but 2 healers," he announced to the assembled crowd. "Mrs. Clara Callahan has worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Mercer, bringing comfort and care to families throughout this territory. She has delivered our babies, healed our sick, and shown us all what it means to serve others with grace and compassion." Clara felt her face heat as applause rippled through the crowd. Sam squeezed her hand, pride radiating from every line of his body. "As a token of our appreciation," Whitmore continued, "the town council has voted to officially recognize Mrs. Callahan as a licensed medical practitioner for the Silver Creek District." Clara's heart stopped. Dr. Mercer stepped forward, holding a framed certificate. "You've earned this," she said, pressing it into Clara's hands. "Every bit of it." Clara looked down at the certificate through tear-blurred eyes. Her name was there, official and permanent. Clara Elizabeth Callahan, licensed medical practitioner. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll keep showing up," Dr. Mercer replied. "Say you'll keep saving lives. Say you'll make me proud." "I will, I promise." The celebration continued around them, but Clara stood frozen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. 3 years ago, she had been an outcast, a woman rejected by society for something beyond her control. Now she was being honored by an entire community for the skills she had developed and the lives she had touched. "Mama!" Rosie's voice cut through the noise as the little girl, not so little anymore at 9 years old, pushed through the crowd to reach her. "Mama, I saw you got a certificate. Does that mean you're a real doctor now?" Clara laughed and scooped her up. "Not exactly a doctor, sweetheart, but close enough." "I'm going to tell everyone," Rosie declared. "I'm going to tell the whole world that my mama saves lives." "You do that, baby. You tell whoever you want." The other children gathered around each, offering their own congratulations. Daniel at 14 shook her hand with grave formality. Henry, his twin, launched into an enthusiastic explanation of how medical science was almost as interesting as astronomy. Lucy at 12 presented Clara with a beautiful painting she'd been working on in secret, a portrait of Clara at work in Dr. Mercer's clinic. And Grace, who had been the hardest to win and the most precious to keep, wrapped her arms around Clara and held on tight. "I'm so proud of you," Grace whispered. "Mama would have loved you." It was the first time Grace had compared Clara to her biological mother. The first time she had acknowledged that Clara had earned a place in Catherine's legacy. Clara held her stepdaughter close and let the tears fall. Fall brought another kind of milestone. Clara woke one morning to find Sam already dressed, pacing their bedroom with an energy she hadn't seen in years. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately alert. "Is one of the children sick?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine." But he wouldn't meet her eyes, and his hands were fidgeting with something in his pocket. "Sam, you're scaring me." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Clara, I need to tell you something." Her heart dropped. After everything they'd been through, after all the healing and rebuilding, was there still something that could tear them apart? "Just say it," she whispered. Sam crossed the room and knelt beside the bed, taking her hands in his. 3 years ago, you came to Montana carrying a secret you thought would destroy any chance of happiness. You were wrong, but you couldn't know that then. You couldn't know that I'd already lost everything I thought I wanted and found something better instead. Sam, let me finish. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I've been carrying this around for 6 months waiting for the right moment. But there is no right moment. There's just this us here now. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the morning light. This was my mother's. Sam said, his voice rough with emotion. She wore it for 43 years of marriage to my father. She told me before she died that I should give it to someone who understood what love really means. Not the fairy tale kind, but the everyday kind. The showing up kind. Clara couldn't breathe. I know we're already married. I know this might seem silly, but I wanted to do this right. I wanted to ask you properly without desperation or secrets between us. Sam took a deep breath. Clara Elizabeth Callahan, will you stay married to me? Will you keep being my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children? Will you grow old with me on this ranch and let me love you until my last breath? Yes, Clara sobbed. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. Sam slid the ring onto her finger next to the simple band she'd worn since their wedding. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the passion and tenderness and love that had built between them over 3 years of struggle and healing. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the golden morning light, two people who had found their way to each other against all odds. The news of Sam's proposal spread through the household like wildfire. Does this mean you're getting married again? Henry asked at breakfast, confusion evident on his face. It means Papa loves Mama so much he wanted to ask her twice, Rosie explained with the certainty of a 9-year-old who understood matters of the heart. It's romantic, Lucy sighed. It's mushy, Daniel countered, but he was smiling. Grace caught Clara's eye across the table. Does the ring fit? Clara held up her hand, showing the way the diamond caught the light. Perfectly. Good. Grace's voice was soft. You deserve something beautiful. The winter of 1894 was the harshest anyone could remember. Snow fell for 3 weeks straight, burying the ranch under drifts that reached the windows. The temperature dropped so low that water froze in the kitchen if the fire wasn't stoked through the night. But inside the Callahan house, there was warmth. They gathered around the fire each evening, all 8 of them, because that's what they were now. A family of 8. Sam would read aloud from whatever book had caught his fancy, his deep voice filling the room with stories of adventure and romance. The children would work on their various projects. Henry his star charts, Lucy her drawings, Rosie her endless collections of treasures. Grace would help Clara with mending, while Daniel carved figures from scraps of wood. On Christmas Eve, they exchanged gifts in front of the fire. Clara had knitted scarves for everyone. Learning to knit had been one of her winter projects, and though the scarves were far from perfect, the children wore them like royal robes. Sam gave Clara a beautiful leather-bound journal, its pages blank and waiting for her to fill with her thoughts and observations from her medical work. But the best gift came from Rosie. The little girl approached Clara shyly, her hands behind her back. I made you something, Mama, but it's not wrapped because I didn't want to cover it up. She brought her hands forward, revealing a small wooden box. Clara opened it to find a collection of stones, 17 of them, each one smooth and beautiful, arranged in a careful pattern. One for every baby you helped bring into the world, Rosie explained. I counted, and I wrote their names on the bottom of the box so you'll always remember. Clara's throat closed up. She pulled Rosie into her arms and held her tight. This child, who had been silent for 3 years, and now spoke with such wisdom and love. It's perfect, she whispered. You're perfect. I'm not perfect, Rosie said matter-of-factly. But I'm yours. And you're mine. And that's better than perfect. Later that night, after the children were in bed and the fire had burned low, Clara and Sam sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold. What are you thinking about? Sam asked. Clara watched her breath cloud in the frigid air. I'm thinking about the woman who got on that train 3 years ago. She was so afraid, so ashamed. She thought she was coming to the end of the world. And now I know she was coming to the beginning. Clara leaned her head against Sam's shoulder. Everything I thought I'd lost, motherhood, purpose, love, I found it here, just in a different form than I expected. Life has a way of doing that, giving us what we need instead of what we think we want. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge one by one in the vast Montana sky. Sam, Thank you. For taking a chance on a woman you'd never met. For forgiving me when I didn't deserve it. For loving me through all of it. Thank you for answering my advertisement. For loving my children like they were your own. For staying when it would have been easier to leave. Sam pressed a kiss to her hair. You're my miracle, Clara. My answered prayer. The years that followed brought more changes, more growth, more love. Daniel grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch until Sam started talking about making him a full partner. Henry left for university in Denver, pursuing his dream of studying astronomy, but he wrote home every week and came back every summer. Lucy's art gained recognition beyond Montana. A gallery in San Francisco wanted to show her work, and she was saving money for the trip. Grace became the teacher she'd always wanted to be taking over the Silver Creek School when old Mrs. Cooper retired. She met a young minister named Thomas, who looked at her like she hung the moon, and their wedding was the biggest celebration the town had seen in years. Rosie grew into a spirited young woman with her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn streak. She talked constantly, making up for those 3 years of silence, with a voice that could fill any room. She wanted to be a doctor someday. A real doctor with a degree and everything, and Clara had no doubt she would do it. And Clara herself. Clara became exactly what she was meant to be. She delivered 137 babies over the next decade. She nursed families through epidemics and accidents and all the ordinary illnesses of frontier life. She trained 3 young women in medical skills, passing on everything Dr. Mercer had taught her. She became such a fixture of the community that people from 3 counties away would travel to Silver Creek just to be treated by the miracle doctor. But her greatest achievement wasn't medical. It was simpler than that. More profound. She became a mother, not in the way biology intended, but in every way that mattered. She raised 5 children who weren't born to her, but belonged to her completely. She loved them through scraped knees and broken hearts, through triumphs and failures, through all the ordinary moments that make up a life. She watched them grow into remarkable adults who made the world better just by being in it. And every single day, she chose them, just as they had chosen her. On her 50th birthday, Clara sat on the porch of the ranch house that had become her home, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. The house was full of noise, grandchildren running through the halls, the smell of Grace's cooking drifting from the kitchen, the sound of Sam's laughter as he told stories to anyone who would listen. Rosie came out to sit beside her, a young woman now at 23, home from her medical studies in Denver. "What are you thinking about, Mama?" Clara smiled at the word. Mama. After all these years, it still made her heart swell. "I'm thinking about how wrong I was. About everything." "What do you mean?" "When I got on that train in Philadelphia, I thought my life was over. I thought I was damaged, broken, worthless, because I couldn't have children." Clara shook her head slowly. "I had no idea that the best part of my life was just beginning." Rosie leaned her head against Clara's shoulder, just as she had when she was 6 years old and scared of the dark. "You know what I remember most about when you first came?" Rosie asked. "Not the first day when I gave you that stone, not even the night you held me through my nightmares. I remember the moment I knew you were going to stay." "When was that?" "It was during Lucy's fever. You hadn't slept in days. You were exhausted, terrified, running on nothing but willpower. And I heard you whisper something to Lucy while you thought everyone else was asleep." Clara's breath caught. "What did I say?" "You said, 'I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I'll never leave you. You're mine now, and I'm yours, and that's forever.'" Rosie lifted her head to meet Clara's eyes. "That's when I knew. That's when I started finding my words again, because I finally believed someone would stay." Clara pulled her daughter close, this child who had given her back her purpose when she thought she had none. "I love you, Rosie." "I love you too, Mama. More than any words could ever say." The door opened behind them, and Sam emerged, looking distinguished with his fully gray hair and the lines that time had carved into his face. He was carrying a small velvet box. "The children wanted to give you something," he said, settling into his chair. We all went in on it together. Clara opened the box to find a delicate gold locket on a chain. Inside were 2 tiny photographs, one of Sam, one of all 5 children squeezed together, their faces bright with love. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Read the inscription." Clara turned the locket over. Engraved on the back, in elegant script, were 3 words: "Our answered prayer." She looked up at Sam through tears, at this man who had taken a chance on a stranger and given her everything she'd ever wanted. "I don't deserve this," she said. "You deserve this, and more." Sam took her hand, his touch as gentle as it had been the first day they met. "You came to us broken and afraid, but you didn't stay broken. You became the heart of this family, the foundation everything else was built on. I just loved you, all of you. That's all I did." "That's everything, Clara. That's the whole world." The sun slipped below the mountains, and the first stars emerged in the vast Montana sky. Inside the house, Clara could hear her grandchildren laughing, her children talking, the sounds of a family she had helped create through nothing but love and determination. She had come to Silver Creek with nothing but a shameful secret and a desperate hope. She had found a husband who loved her children, who needed her, and a purpose that gave her life meaning. She had discovered that motherhood wasn't about biology. It was about showing up day after day and choosing the people who had chosen you. Clara Bennett had thought she was damaged goods. Clara Callahan knew she was exactly what this family had always needed. Not broken, not worthless, not incomplete. Whole.